Aloha and good afternoon. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, joining you from Itobu News in Honolulu, Hawaii. With me, as always, is Dr. Peter Thaler in College Station, Texas. And today we have a guest. He's joining us from down under, from the Brisbane area in Australia, Jeff Wilkes. And Peter will introduce him, and you will hear a lot more about Jeff and what he's doing. Here in Honolulu, it's a beautiful day today, sunny. People go to the beach, wondering how's everything in College Station and Brisbane.
Well, first of all, and then I'll ask Jeff to tell us a little bit about the weather in Australia. Jeff, if you're not familiar with our program, we always start with the local weather forecast, and people around the world listen. So today was an absolutely beautiful day in College Station. It started out around 32 degrees, that's 0 on the Celsius scale. But by the end of the day, it was up to about 65, which is about 19 degrees, blue skies, a gentle wind, and everybody was walking around in their shirt sleeves. So today was just a great day. Tomorrow is supposed to be even a better day. So that's a great way to introduce Jeff, because Jeff, first tell us a little bit about your weather, and then I'm going to tell people a little bit about you.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Jürgen. It's lovely to be with you. So I'm talking to you from Paradise Point on the Gold Coast of Queensland, where the logo years ago was beautiful one day, perfect the next. And that's true most of the year. But unfortunately, in the last week, we've had severe flooding all through the southeast of Queensland. And just south of me, they're saying this morning, which is, unimaginably flooded, people are being rescued from their roofs, that it's the worst weather system, the worst flooding for up to 500 years. So fortunately where I am, we missed the brunt of that. And the sun is out here and the rivers are still swollen and people are still in strife, but things are returning to normal.
And just to introduce, Jeff is obviously speaking to us from down under in Australia. For those who do not know where Queensland is a state on the Australian continent. So he's on the east coast of Australia and a very beautiful part called the Gold Coast. And I've been to Brisbane, and it's just a beautiful city. We're here, though, this evening, not to talk so much about the weather in Australia, and we hope it dries out, but we are instead going to be talking about a new book that Jeff and some of his colleagues are the editors of, and they pulled it all together. I was very lucky to be able to write one of the chapters in that book, dealing with policing in a post-COVID world. But for those of you who've never met Jeff, he's absolutely brilliant. He's famous for many things. He's a great lawyer. He's also an academic. And the other side of it is that he is also a specialist on dealing with lifeguards, security, beach security, and everything that deals with the ocean. And he's written a book about that. I know that I'm hoping that if we do a major project in Ecuador, to bring Jeff to Ecuador so that he'll be able to add some of his expertise about beach and ocean tourism safety. So we might call it aquatic safety. He probably knows a lot about swimming pools also, but I have a feeling he's more in the ocean than in just a local swimming pool. But anyway, Jeff, so you pulled this book together. You got me to write a chapter and people from all over the world to write chapters. I see you have a picture up there, Tourist Health, Safety, and Wellbeing in the New Normal. And tell us a little bit about this book and what got you to write this book, especially during the COVID pandemic, which was so awful.
Yeah. So thanks, Peter. It does seem a little strange to be talking about customers at a time when there were lockdowns occurring right throughout the world. But we did this because we believe that tourism is resilient and we were going to get through this crisis. But it was important as part of that journey not to forget all the other components of customer care and quality service. So we have to look after our visitors in all other areas apart from the pandemic. Even though the pandemic was on everyone's mind, we wanted to get in nice and early to remind scholars and the industry of all the other areas of visitor care that were very important. So, for example, as the industry pivoted in most countries, losing international visitors, but paying more attention to domestic tourism, using that opportunity to share their tourism with their local populations, we found that, for example, people were exploring the great outdoors, but they were getting lost. There were many cases of rescues on mountains where people were saying, well, I went for a hike in the mountain with my friends and we lost cell service and we didn't have any water or any warm clothing, and we got into trouble because we don't normally go into the mountains. Yeah. And so it's not blaming anyone. It's just saying that people were exploring. They were exploring beaches where there were no lifeguards. And we needed to sort of pivot and take account of a changing environment where customer care was a little different. We had to think about these visitors and how we looked after them. So that was what it was all about. And we wanted to canvas a whole range of things: engineering, policing, health, so that we could see what the landscape might be like in the new normal after the pandemic had become more controlled, after we'd moved through that crisis period, and what the new normal might look like.
Yeah, and I think it's really timely, at least in the United States. Some people believe because of health and some people believe because of politics, but most of the regulations have been taken off now. And with the exception of school children who are still suffering and many have to be masked, nobody knows why, but they do. Most of the other regulations are coming off. And so we are kind of entering into either a post-COVID world or a new normal, or an old normal that's becoming a new normal. I'm not sure which way it's going to go quite yet. I think none of us really quite understand that. But wow, this book is so relevant when you realize that it's just in the last week or two that things really are starting to open up tremendously. So was this book written? I know that I struggled a little bit. I wanted to make it a practical, but I also needed to make it academic because it was an academic book. So what was the balance there between the academic side and, let's say, the applied side?
Okay, and we made it very clear in asking the contributors to offer something that was evidence-based. So we wanted good scholarship and we wanted evidence rather than marketing and spin. Yes. So we wanted some factual stuff about what was happening, but we also encouraged the writers, yourself, and there are 38 contributors to the book across 7 countries. We wanted them to be creative, to look at what was going on in their field, rather than the stock standard stuff of tourist health, safety, and well-being. Be a bit creative. So, for example, the aviation chapter was written by 2 engineers and a business person. And so they were able to offer us insights in how the aviation industry was using robotics and really clever engineering techniques to provide safety to travelers. So I guess that's the uniqueness across the book, that we've got some very good insights that are incredibly relevant for the industry, but are all evidence-based.
Yes. Just so
it's not
you
a
all know
flippant
that
book,
I'm going,
but it's a useful book, I hope. So just as one more example, we dedicated the book to the class of 2020. So this is the group who had finished high school during the pandemic. And we were aware of all the things that they missed out on in terms of, milestones in their lives.
Yeah.
But we also wanted to know what that meant for their travel intentions. So we talked to young people and we looked at influencers, people who on social media can say, let's go to Ecuador. And here's a picture of me in Ecuador, and everyone, their 18 million followers say, wow, that looks great. Let's go to Ecuador. And so these sort of people are shaping travel patterns into the future. And we needed to know how they saw health, safety, and well-being. And we kind of captured that sort of thing.
Just for our listeners to know that Jeff is speaking from the other side of the world, and sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. So if his mouth and his words are not coordinated, it's because the picture goes faster than sound across the world. So we're about 18,000 kilometers apart from each other at the moment. It's really an amazing thing that we can have someone sitting in Hawaii, someone sitting in Texas, and someone sitting in Australia, and we're having a conversation. So think what a wonderful set of miracles that is, that we're able to do that. I know that, you don't know this yet, but I'm going to be giving a speech to medical personnel about COVID and security in Guadalajara, Mexico on the 16th and 17th of this coming month of March. And I'm going to be talking about much of the material in my chapter and how this impacts doctors, how it will impact medical tourism, and how it's going to impact the role of safety in the post-COVID world. So that's going to be some real applied usage, at least of that one chapter. And I'll let you know how the people, I have to translate some of the terms into Spanish for them, but it'll be the first Spanish rendition of at least that chapter of the book. So hopefully that will do some good. Jürgen, did you want to ask any questions, or do you want this to be just a two-way conversation?
No, it's good to talking about the book. Of course, besides the book, I would love to get some feedback. How's the situation currently in Australia with COVID? How do people look at the situation with Ukraine? These are all really hot topics right now, and we haven't really had a good handle on how things are looked at this from down under.
Sure. And if I start with COVID, where our international borders were opened 2 weeks ago. Now, that's not a broad opening, but we're starting to have international visitors arriving, families being reunited. The first groups of international students, which is a very important part of the tourism industry in Australia, to have international students studying here, and by extension their families visit and they contribute to the local workforce. So a very important group of international visitors starting to return. In terms of the Ukraine, I think because it's so far away, for a lot of Australians, it's a case of watching and trying to understand the situation and the implications. Australia is a very multicultural society, so there are lots of European Australians, dual citizens here. So we hear a lot about what's going on, but as a country, I think we're waiting and watching, trying to understand the implications, particularly for tourism.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the situation everywhere. But I'm glad Australia is opening up for tourism, because you have been locked up literally for the longest of any country in the world. How are you coping with all of that? Are you you must be really happy that things are changing now, finally, on this regards.
it's been incredibly difficult. There are parts of Queensland which the Great Barrier Reef runs along the coast of Queensland, and it's a World Heritage, world-renowned site. We have millions of visitors coming to see the reef, as well as the other icons around the country. And so it has been heartbreaking. But by keeping the borders firm, we've avoided the number of deaths that unfortunately have occurred right around the world. I mean, we've suffered economically, we've suffered emotionally, but we have kept the death rate right down. And even now, there's very well thought out strategies of opening and closing of schools and trying to get it back to normal without jeopardizing the health and safety of particularly the elderly. So that's our weak point at the moment, is that COVID getting into aged care facilities and hospitals creates a particular weak point. So the politicians, whether you agree with them or not, have protected the health of Australians and put that higher probably than economic considerations. And that's hurt a lot of people, but we've come through it with relatively low numbers of deaths compared to some other destinations.
Do you think the book that has anything that gives, because of all the COVID and the fact that it is a book about health and safety and well-being, does it have a positive message that it can give to people when they read this book? Or is it basically a factual information?
No, I think there's lots of positive messages. And there's some indications now within the medical literature that all the resources that we've put into COVID, all the research and all the expertise right around the world are going to pay benefits, dividends in other areas of medicine. So, for example, the chapter on pre-travel medical consultations. So it's always been an important part of travel to make sure you're fit to travel, you're fit to do these things. But I think for the traveling public now, that's been highlighted, and that part of medicine is going to take an ascendancy in the future. And I mention this because the Australian Water Safety Council, the people who look after the health and safety of people in water-related areas, beaches, rivers, they're noticing and commenting on the number of cardiac conditions that they're seeing on beaches. So as people come out of isolation, perhaps they haven't exercised as much, schools haven't been able to offer swim classes, people go to the beach when there are unpatrolled areas and they swim by themselves. There's a whole lot of things there about, and basically fitness. People are suffering cardiac events. And that reinforces the fact that we should be saying to all travellers, make sure in the future, not only do you get your vaccinations and check on traffic conditions and things like that, make sure you go and see your travel doctor and get your insurance so that you're ready to go. So I think the new normal has a different psyche for a lot of the travelling public. In the past, young people were the ones that wouldn't take travel insurance because they were young.
They were invulnerable. They were undefeatable.
Yeah. So and it's interesting now that that you talk to the young people, there is an appreciation that they don't want to end up in some exotic place having a health problem where they don't have insurance and don't have a safety net. They like the idea more so now that it's important to have a safety net. And it's not just about COVID or a medical illness, but it could be an injury. I noticed that there's some movement within the ski industry in certain destinations now to insist that people have some sort of insurance before they go skiing, so that they're not a burden on the local economy, and that they get good care.
Are you giving us this particular subliminal message by your shirt, which I see is about fish swimming back and forth in blue water?
I'm an obsessive fish shirt person. I have many fish shirts, and it took me a while this morning to decide which one should come onto eTurbo News this morning, and this is the one that was chosen.
No, wonderful. I think it was very interesting talking to you and learning more about Australia, your book, and everything else. Hopefully, you can we can be in touch and do more of this. Also, I wanted to remind everyone who's listening to you, join our World Tourism Network, and we will have more interesting events like we had today about many subjects that are close to the travel and tourism industry. And of course, if you wanted to listen to any of our breaking news and news talk updates, you can always click on our YouTube link. It's on every page on eTurbo News, and it will get you right there, and you can actually listen and watch everything we've done. And you see Peter and myself on a lot of these events, and we're really covering the world. Especially now, it's important to stay up to date what is going on. Well, from my end, I wanted to thank you, and I'm going to give it back to Peter. But I wish everyone a nice evening, nice afternoon, and as we say here in Hawaii, aloha. We're looking for more Australian coming in here. I just heard from some friends actually in Sydney. They're coming in with a group of 8 people and wanted to go out for dinner. So it looks like this world is slowly opening up.
And I'm really glad, Jeff, I want to really thank you for having spent some time with us. This will be up and running very soon, so I'll make sure you get to see a copy of it. And please spread it around the world. I want to wish you happy aquatic tourism. And I really want to thank you not only for allowing me to be part of this book, but I think this is a very important book because it is part of whatever is going to become the new normal. And right now, of course, the tourism world has gone from one crisis, that of COVID, right into a new crisis, which is the war in Europe. But let's hope that soon peace comes back and that COVID goes away. And maybe we'll be able to someday go back to the old normal and just worry about beach safety and, if it's raining or not. So, Jeff, I really want to thank you. I encourage people to get the book. How can they buy the book around the world?
So the book is published by Springer, and it's in full color, which is a bit unusual for tourism books at the moment. Beautiful illustrations, very relevant. So just go on to just type in tourist health, safety, and well-being, and it'll take you to the Springer site where you can order the book, either in physical, a hard copy, or online, downloading, whatever you like.
Is it also on Amazon for people who want to book?
Yes, yeah, it's on Amazon as well.
Okay, so either go to Springer, I assume it's springer.com or
Springer.com.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, and again, the book is called Tourist Health, Safety, and Well-Being in the New Normal. And the main editor is our friend, Dr. Jeff Wilkes. So Jeff, stay dry in Australia. And, I guess if not, you can go swimming with the fish. So good evening from Texas. Good, I guess it's the afternoon in Australia. So you have a wonderful day, and I hope the sun comes out soon. Bye-bye.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Jürgen.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.